Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're really strapping in. We're going for a ride through the future of energy, and trust me, it's wilder than you might think.
Yeah.
We've got two really big reports on the table today. The DNV Energy Transition Outlook 2024 and the IEA's Renewables 2024 report. And these aren't just, some dry analyses. These are like giving us a glimpse into the global energy systems that'll be shaping our lives all the way to 2050.
You know, what's remarkable about these reports is that they cut through all the noise and kind of offer a grounded perspective on where we're actually headed. They don't shy away from all the complexities, whether it's the economics of the transition, the geopolitical shifts it's causing, or even, the pushback from society that we sometimes see.
Right, because let's be real, this energy transition, it's not some smooth automated process. It's messy, it's political, and honestly, it affects every single one of us. So let's start unpacking this whole thing. And I guess a good place to start is energy demand. We all need energy, right? But what's really interesting is how that demand is playing out across the globe. Developed economies like those in the OECD, they're kind of hitting a plateau. Things are, pretty stable there.
Yeah.
But
when you look in Asia, for example, it's a completely different story.
Right.
Energy demand is skyrocketing there.
Yeah.
And that's really going to reshape the entire landscape of energy production, investment, and even global power dynamics in the coming decades.
Okay, so picture this. You hear energy revolution. What's the first image that pops into your head? It's probably a sleek electric car, right? And don't get me wrong, electric vehicles are a huge part of this shift. In fact, they're projected to be like half of all new car sales globally by 2031. But here's the kicker. There's a silent energy hog, kind of, like lurking in the background. And it's something most people don't even consider.
Yeah, aviation.
Yeah.
By 2050, the demand for energy just from air travel is projected to triple. And this is really driven by, I think, a few factors. Rising prosperity around the world, changing travel patterns. Basically, more people are flying, and they're flying more often.
Yeah, which is so interesting because you think with all this focus on electric cars, we'd have the planes figured out too. But the technology for electric airplanes, especially for those long haul flights, it isn't there yet.
Exactly. And to give you an even clearer picture of this whole aviation boom, let's look at Greater China. By the mid-2040s, the energy demand from flying there will actually surpass the demand from road transport. Think about that for a second. More energy going into the skies than into all the cars, buses, and trucks combined. So it really highlights how urgent the need is for things like sustainable aviation fuels,
Right,
a topic that, both of these reports delve into in quite a bit of detail.
Yeah, it's like we're so focused on what's happening on the ground that we kind of forget to look up. And even if we do manage to electrify all those cars, there's another massive hurdle we have to clear, and that's the grid itself. We're talking about needing 2.5 times the grid capacity by 2050 just to handle all the electric vehicles and appliances.
It's a point that can't be overstated. This transition isn't just about, swapping out gas stations for charging stations. It really demands a complete overhaul of our infrastructure, from how we generate electricity to how we move it around.
Okay, so we've established we need cleaner energy and we need it fast. Which brings us to, I guess, the rock stars of the energy transition, renewables. We're talking solar, wind, the whole shebang. In fact, the DNV report even highlights this global renewables and energy efficiency pledge that was signed by numerous countries at COP28. It feels like everyone is kind of jumping on the renewable bandwagon, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a huge surge in momentum, but it's not quite as simple as, blanketing the planet with solar panels and calling it a day.
Right.
While solar and wind energy are becoming remarkably affordable, there are some significant bottlenecks that are kind of slowing down that pace of implementation.
Oh, I bet you're going to say the supply chain issues everyone keeps mentioning.
Exactly. Yeah, we're facing challenges in manufacturing and getting those materials where they need to be, and even, just public acceptance. Not everyone is thrilled about having a wind turbine in their backyard, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting how something as seemingly straightforward as more clean energy gets tangled up in so many complex issues. And speaking of complex, can we talk about lithium for a second? It feels like every other day there's a new article about us running out of lithium for batteries. Is this a legitimate concern or is this, overblown?
It's definitely a valid concern, but the IEA report actually offers, I think, a really interesting potential solution here, and that's recycling.
Okay.
Imagine this. By 2050, we could be getting over a quarter of the materials we need for batteries from recycled sources.
Wow, see, that's huge. That almost feels too good to be true. So what's the catch?
Well, the catch is that we need to invest heavily in those recycling technologies now.
Right.
We can't just wait until we're, drowning in old batteries and hope for the best. We need to be proactive about developing the infrastructure and the processes to really make large-scale battery recycling a reality.
It's like we're racing against the clock to kind of like build this whole new system, but the clock is ticking faster with every passing year. And speaking of scale, the report mentions China needing a staggering 2.6 terawatts of solar power capacity connected to their grid by 2050. I mean, to put that in perspective for our listeners, that's enough energy to power like a small country.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to think about the like logistical and technological challenges involved in like managing that much solar power.
It's a monumental undertaking, and it really speaks to, China's ambition to become a global leader in this clean energy space. And this brings us to, I think, another really crucial aspect of this whole energy transition, and that's geopolitics. Because this isn't just about, megawatts and gigawatts. It's about global power dynamics.
Right, because the DNV report talks about countries wanting energy security and economic sovereignty. It kind of sounds a little bit like code for, we want to be in control of our own destiny and we don't want to be reliant on anyone else. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This transition to cleaner energy is really reshaping global alliances and creating these new dependencies. And we're seeing countries trying to, reduce their reliance on traditional energy suppliers, especially when it comes to things like essential minerals and these cutting-edge clean technologies. It's becoming a new kind of strategic resource battleground.
It's fascinating how this clean energy revolution is intertwined with so many other global shifts. For example, the report talks about Europe's push for this hydrogen economy. They're really aiming to be at the forefront of this new hydrogen technology, but they face this crucial decision that produce the hydrogen themselves or import it from elsewhere. Each path kind of comes with its own set of advantages and drawbacks.
You hit the nail on the head. Producing hydrogen domestically, that requires substantial investments in renewable energy sources, the infrastructure, but it offers greater control and, what we were just talking about, energy security. On the other hand, importing hydrogen, while potentially more cost-effective in the short term, it does raise concerns about reliance on other nations and, the stability of those supply chains. It's a classic dilemma with no easy answers.
It makes you wonder about, I don't know, are there any downsides, even with all these positive strides we're making in clean energy? Because, anytime you have a global shift of this magnitude, there are going to be some, unforeseen consequences.
You're absolutely right. And the DNV report actually kind of touches on this crucial point. They say, even with the best intentions, this clean energy boom that we're seeing, it could have some unintended negative consequences.
Like what?
Well, for example, think about the land use that's required.
Yeah.
For mining those critical minerals.
Right.
Or for all those massive solar and wind installations.
Right.
That has the potential to threaten, biodiversity ecosystems if we're not careful about how we're going about it.
It's a good reminder that, progress on one front doesn't mean we can ignore the bigger picture.
Right.
We have to find ways to, make this transition truly sustainable, I guess, in every sense of the word.
Exactly, yeah. And that's where this whole concept of a just transition comes in.
Okay.
Both of these reports really emphasize that this transition can't just be about, reducing emissions. It has to be about fairness. It has to be about equity.
Right.
And making sure that no one is left behind in this process.
Okay, so we're talking about a complete overhaul of the global energy system.
Yeah.
We're navigating geopolitical tensions, and we're trying to do it all in a way that's, just equitable for everyone involved. It's a pretty tall order, to say the least, but let's be realistic. None of this happens without some serious cash flow. So what's the financial outlook for all of this?
Well, the IEA report actually dives into the economics of this. And the good news is that investments in renewable energy, they are skyrocketing.
Okay.
We're talking trillions of dollars flowing into this sector. However, and there's kind of a ticking time bomb that the IEA highlights, and that is that we're looking at a massive skills gap.
So it's not just about having the money, it's about having the right people with the right skills to actually build this clean energy future. What are the reports saying about how we can kind of tackle this skills gap?
Well, it's a multifaceted challenge for sure, but the reports emphasize the need for, proactive policies, things like retraining programs for workers who are in, declining fossil fuel industries,
Yeah.
investments in STEM education to really prepare that workforce of tomorrow. And even, thinking about things like early retirement options to kind of ensure a smoother transition for those who are currently employed in those sectors.
It's like we're building a bridge to a cleaner future, but we have to make sure that, no one falls through the cracks during that construction process.
Exactly. And another fascinating aspect that the IEA report really explores is how these investments are actually distributed globally.
Okay.
And they highlight how regions that have, strong state control, and they point to China specifically, they have a much tighter grip on these investments. Now, this can be both beneficial and potentially problematic.
Sure.
On the one hand, it allows for much faster deployment of these clean energy technologies.
Right.
But on the other hand, it does raise some concerns about, well, is there fair competition, and, are we looking at truly open markets?
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act. And it highlights, going back to what we were talking about earlier, just the complexities of this energy transition. After diving into these reports, it's clear that we are in the midst of a truly historic transformation, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
And the decisions we make today, in this very decade, they will have a ripple effect for generations to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The reports really drive home the point that we have the technology, we have the resources, and now increasingly we're seeing, we have the financial capital to achieve this net zero future. But achieving it really hinges on those choices that we make, both individually and collectively in the next really few years. And it's not just about technological innovation. It's about political will. It's about social acceptance and really global cooperation on a scale that I don't think we've ever seen before.
So after all of this, the million-dollar question is, are we going to make it? Is a net zero future by 2050 actually truly within our grasp? Both reports, they offer this cautiously optimistic outlook, but it's clear that there's still a really, really long and challenging road ahead.
Yeah, it's not a foregone conclusion by any means, but there is, I think, a glimmer of hope there. What these reports ultimately tell us is that we hold the power, to shape the future of energy. This isn't something that's just happening to us. This is something we're actively creating through the choices that we make every single day. And that kind of brings it back to, what kind of energy future do we want for ourselves and for, the generations that come after us? And that's a question that, everyone listening really needs to ask themselves.
It's certainly given us a lot to think about, and that's what the deep dive is all about. Diving into these, really complex issues, kind of uncovering the hidden connections, and hopefully leaving you with more questions than answers. So thanks, everyone, for joining us on this deep dive into the future of energy. We'll see you next time.